So my first film is The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. This was a film I remember buying on DVD from, it was the Trafford Centre. I think it was HMV or Virgin when Virgin was still open, and had no idea what it was, but saw an arcade machine and saw it was a documentary and thought, yeah, I'll give that one a go. I find documentaries to be really powerful as well. I remember late teens, I saw Super Size Me, which was where the guy ate nothing but McDonald's for a full month. And it was the first film I'd seen that really made me think about me and my own life. And I thought, I've never really considered what I'm putting into my body before in terms of food. And it was so powerful. And it made me think of food a different way. And I think from that moment, I found documentaries really powerful because it's like the real life stories of people and what they go through. So I watched this anyway, and it's a documentary about old arcade machines, and it was Donkey Kong Jr., which I think was popular in the 80s. Now, arcade machines back in the day, you had to have real skill to play them. It wasn't like Call of Duty and game simulators now. It was like a joystick and some buttons, and it required real and eye-hand coordination. So it's these two characters, and it's a real tale of good versus evil. On the evil side, you've got this guy called Billy Mitchell, who he's a bit of an entrepreneur and a businessman, and he's really, really good at arcade machines, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong Jr., holds records. On the other side, you've got Steve Wiebe, who's like a real family man, like lovely family guy. I think he's a teacher in a school, and he one day, I think he's had a run of bad luck. I think he's lost his job and all that sort of stuff. And on one day, he decides, I'm quite good at arcade machines. I'm going to have a go at beating the record of Donkey Kong Jr. So it's him getting really good at this arcade game, Donkey Kong. But Steve Wiebe's got this. Steve Wiebe's the good guy. Billy Mitchell's the bad guy. Billy Mitchell's got this entourage of people surrounding him. And even though Steve Wiebe's good and he's breaking the records, they don't let him have the records for whatever reason. They try and say that he's cheating, and he sends in videotapes and they say that video blipped a little bit. There's something not quite right about this. So it's basically a battle between Steve Wiebe, the good guy, trying to break this record and get his record recognized, and Billy Mitchell, who's kind of like the man who won't get the records recognized. And it's one of the most fascinating films you'll ever see. Considering there's all these blockbusters that cost hundreds of millions, I find a lot of them so boring and CGI heavy. This is just very basically shot, documentary style, and it's more gripping than a lot of those big blockbusters that you will see. So this is my first pick, King of Kong, Fistful of Quarters. Great family film as well. My next pick is Disney Pixar's Inside Out. I was lucky enough, so I was born in 1985. I was lucky enough to get on the Disney Pixar train when Toy Story came out. So I would have been maybe, when was that, 95, 96? I would have been 10, 11. So imagine being that age and going to the cinema and watching Toy Story. No one had ever seen anything like it before because of it was an animated film, but it wasn't cartoon, which was what I'd been watching previously. I'd been watching loads of cartoons, and then this thing came out, which was made by computers, and it was absolutely amazing. The best thing about Toy Story, though, was the actual story itself, these toys coming to life. That's where the Disney Pixar obsession started. Then as a grown man, when was this? Like 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. Still going to see Disney Pixar films on my own in the cinema, like some creepy man. But they just know how to make films. They're absolutely unbelievable at it. And I think this is probably, aside from Toy Story, I think this is probably their masterpiece. I remember Mark Kermode, the film reviewer for the year this was out, picking it as his favourite film. Not his favourite kids film, but his favourite film of the year. I remember that resonating with me, thinking they don't all have to be art house films or indie films to be considered as amazing pieces of art and pieces of work. I remember thinking, yeah, why can't it be kids' films that are considered amazing? It's the tale of, so I don't know if anyone remembers Numbskulls, which was a cartoon. So it was like a human body, and within the body, you had little characters controlling the body. And Inside Out is basically that, but inside the brain. So you get all these characters like sadness and anger, and they are living in the brain of this little, I think it's an 11-year-old girl, yeah, Riley. So they are living in her brain, and they are these emotions, and she's obviously going through all these new emotions. I think she changes city and changes school, and she's feeling all these emotions and she can't quite deal with them. So it's all these different characters are trying to kind of guide her through. It's so well directed. The story is unbelievable. I don't know how they came up with the story. And it's the trials and tribulations of a young person trying to navigate school and friendships. But they just get the tone of it absolutely right. You will laugh, you will cry, you will come out feeling fulfilled. If you've never seen this and you're after a film for the kids or the family, absolutely, I would recommend Disney Pixar's Inside Out. My next pick is Baby Driver, directed by Edgar Wright. Couple of reasons I've chosen this one. Firstly, I remember being a teenage lad, mid to late 1990s, really getting into comedy. And there was a Channel 4 sitcom called Spaced, which was directed by Edgar Wright, who nobody had heard of. In that, you had Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who'd popped up in a couple of different things by that point. But the unique thing about Spaced was there wasn't anything else like it. For a sitcom, it was so well shot. There was a lot of references to horror films and sci-fi, but it looked like nothing else. I think sitcoms were very one or two cameras in a room filming characters, with very kind of scripted setup jokes, felt a bit unnatural. Something about Spaced felt so. It was about 30 somethings who were living in London, and it just felt different to anything I'd ever seen. Fast forward, and then you have films like Shaun of the Dead coming out, which is directed by Edgar Wright, Hot Fuzz. But this, for me, felt like Edgar Wright's big Hollywood cinematic coming out party. Essentially, it was him saying to Hollywood, I've arrived and I can do these big films with these big actors, and you will be impressed by them. It's about a young lad, very baby faced, and he is basically a getaway driver for some crime type mobs, and he gets caught up in some pretty heavy bad business. But his thing is that he drives really well whilst listening to music, and all the film is set to music. So the steering wheel will be turned when certain things happen. There'll be like tapping and things happening in rhythm with the music. The reason this film means a lot to me is I've been going out with my girlfriend Laura for, I think it's 8 years this year. So 2017, this was out. This was the first film that we went to see in the cinema together. I think when you start going out with someone, it's a real measure, isn't it? When you watch a film or you go to the cinema the first time, it's, are they going to enjoy it? Can we talk about it afterwards? We both absolutely loved watching this film in the cinema. Again, one of my favorite directors, Edgar Wright. The way it is set to music is unlike anything you've ever seen. If you've never seen this film before, I highly recommend it. It's Baby Driver. So my next pick is a film called Victoria, which is it's a foreign language film. I think it's based in Berlin. But then the girl in it, the main character who plays Victoria, I think she's Spanish and she's moved to Germany. And it's essentially a bit of a crime film. She's on a night out and meets these guys, and it captures what it was to be on a night out when you were younger, where you'd kind of like, it'd be the early hours of the morning, you'd stumble out of a club, you might have met some people, you're basically walking the streets having a bit of a laugh and being a bit leery. So she meets these guys, she's getting on with them, she fancies one of them, so there's a bit of a love story going on. But these guys, there's something to do with, I think it's drugs or a gun or something. And in the course of this night out, early hours of the morning, very quiet in Berlin, they end up getting wrapped up where they have to go and see this quite nasty crime boss and deliver him something, or like get a package from him and then deliver it somewhere else. She ends up getting caught up in this, and what starts as a fun night out ends up being, is she going to survive this? Like, what's going to happen here? Foreign language with subtitles, and I find I've got to be in the mood for subtitled films. If I'm feeling a bit tired, I might not go for it. I think the best foreign language or subtitle films are ones where within 5 or 10 minutes you forget you're reading the subtitles. This is definitely the case for this one. The amazing thing about this film is that it's filmed in one shot, and I've chosen this because as we film, Adolescence has recently come out on Netflix, which stars Stephen Graham, which was a couple of episodes, and each episode was filmed in one shot. So it's like one camera going from scene to scene, which is quite a feat of engineering. I've seen this done a couple of times before. The first one-shot film I saw was Birdman, which wasn't actually done in one shot, but it made it seem like it was. Then there was Boiling Point, which starred Stephen Graham, which is set in a restaurant, which I think gave him the appetite to film more in that way. But this was the one that I remember of one-shot films, where it starts in a nightclub, goes onto the streets of Berlin, goes into this, I think it's like a car park where some sort of deals being done. Then they get in a car and they have to drive somewhere and deliver a package or deliver someone. The incredible film about this film is while they're in the car in this very tense moment, I think the director is in the boot of the car at the time. They obviously have the route planned out as people making a film. It's like, we're doing it in one shot. We can't afford any mistakes. In real life, the car takes the wrong turn and starts going the wrong way. The director's in the boot freaking out. All the actors are freaking out because they know they've taken a wrong turn. So you feel this, it's already a tense scene. You feel more tension because the actual actors in the car realize they've gone the wrong way. I think they have to reverse around the corner. They get back on track and complete the film. But it's such an incredible, intense film. Amazing thriller. Absolutely would recommend this. Give it a go, even if you're a little bit like that with subtitled films. Victoria is incredible. You will not regret watching this film. So my final pick is Interstellar, the sci-fi film directed by Christopher Nolan. The love affair with Christopher Nolan, I think, started with the Batman films. I think it was probably The Dark Knight, which everyone was absolutely raving about, and people were blown away with how superhero films could be dark and gritty and quite artistic. And then I think everybody really off the back of that started getting into how good of a director Christopher Nolan was. He then went on to direct one of my other favourite films, which is Inception. And it was a toss-up between Inception and Interstellar. I've gone with this because I think this was probably one of the greatest cinema experiences I've ever had. I think it was a quiet Friday afternoon, had the day off work, went to the cinema, me and a handful of other people in the cinema. This is one of those films, and I think Christopher Nolan is very passionate about this. Cinema is slowly becoming a thing of the past for a lot of people. Not so many people are going to the cinema anymore. There are films that are made for the cinema, and cinemas have to stick around for films like this, because when you're taking the visuals and the soundtrack and the story and they all work in harmony, there is nothing better than sitting in a cinema and just being swept away on a journey and forgetting about everything else that might be happening in your life. The soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, I think, is absolutely incredible. I think the performances by Matthew McConaughey, it's basically he has to go to space to try and find other planets that he can colonize to potentially other people can live on these planets in the future, because Earth is slowly dying because crops are dying and there's less food for people to eat. So he's a spaceman who, with a crew, has to go through black holes and wormholes and try and find other planets. I'm not a massive sci-fi fan, but at the crux of it is a father and daughter story. So I think something has happened to the mum, and I think he's the only parent left, and he has to go to outer space and leave his kids behind. He'll be gone for he doesn't know how long. So even though it's a sci-fi film, it's essentially Matthew McConaughey's character. It's him having to leave his daughter and being absolutely heartbroken. And there's a really emotional scene where she sends a video to outer space. They're on a spaceship and he's watching it and he's breaking down, and so emotional and such a clever film. I actually went to see this at the Royal Albert Hall in London as well. I think it was upon the DVD or the Blu-ray release. they said we're going to do a one-off show on Royal Albert Hall. I jumped the train down to London to stay over for the night. Went to see it on my own. There's a full orchestra playing along with it as well. I think Hans Zimmer was there. Christopher Nolan was there. I think Stephen Hawking was actually there, as I seem to remember. So to watch this in the Royal Albert Hall with the full orchestra, incredible. Again, great film, and probably one of the best cinema experiences I've ever had. Interstellar.